Home Trails podcast presented by me, Ultra Running Sam. Now, this podcast is part of the Home Trails media entity that encompasses our Home Trails documentaries. You may have seen them on YouTube, so where we interview famous ultra runners from around the world and in the UK at the moment. We film them on the trail and in the home, obviously, Home Trails. Get those insights into their training, big races they've done, and then just their background information. Try and dig a bit deeper into what motivates them to go and do these amazing things that they do. Also part of Home Trails is new for this year is our live podcast coming from big races. You may have seen us at the Spine Race in January. We were there doing our thing all week. Later on in the summer, we will be at the Lap in the Lake District, and then keep your eyes peeled for other races where we'll be popping up and doing media coverage for some big races, hopefully. So obviously we have a podcast now, so we'll keep doing this every week, keep churning out the podcasts with famous runners and people in the industry, anyone that we can get on that we feel that you might be interested in related to trail running and ultra running. So on with our guest. Okay, so welcome to the Home Trails podcast with me, Ultra Running Sam, your loving host. So quickly before tonight's guest, which is Mike McMonagle, aka Shit in the Woods, which is an Instagram handle. He's a US runner and fast media guy. You might know him from the Single Track podcast. So he's a regular contributor to Finn Melanson's podcast Single Track, and he recently came over and did UTS Snowdonia. So we're going to have a chat to get his perspective as a US media guy coming over to do a very British race and how he got on and how he fared with that race. But just to sort of keep you up to speed with what's going on with the podcast. So we are now entering sort of midsummer. So the phase that we're going to enter into now will obviously be in June, the start of June next week. So we'll be talking about the summer spine races. So I'm going to have a few guys and gals, and do some preview episodes with people doing different distances of that race. John Shields coming on to talk about doing the full summer spine, and we'll get some of the guys doing Challenger South, and we'll figure out the rest anyway, and have a chat with some people doing those races and get them on. Also happening in June, obviously, is Western States, so Statesmas, as they call it. So I'm hopefully going to be having a US correspondent for this one. So a friend of the show and my mate who I haven't seen in a few years, Dan Davis, who's in the US, and he will obviously be at States. He's always there every year, helping out, running follow cams and just generally just being at the race and doing stuff for the race. So he's tentatively agreed to come on and be the US correspondent for us. So obviously I'd love to be there. Every year I say it's the same thing. I want to go back, and I will go back eventually when the funds allow it and the family holiday works. But until then, yeah, hopefully we'll get him on and we'll get some insights. Probably before we'll do like a preview episode for Western States and talk about who's going to be there, who's not going to be there. Rumors of people dropping out. People have dropped out. Hayden Hawks, and then we'll see what actually happens, and then we'll catch up with him afterwards and get some of the goss from the race. So that's what's coming up over the next month. But now we have our guest, Mike McMonagle. I'm going to get his name wrong, but we'll try our best. So it'll be coming into the breakout room shortly, and I'll get him on. So we'll just pause and then get him on. Right, we are re-recording. So just done a bit of a sort of a preview, just to sort of explain who you are. I know obviously, like I know who you are. People in UK trail running media know who you are, definitely. But for my listeners and viewers who don't know who you are, you're Mike McMonagle, and I've been practicing your name because I keep saying McMonagle.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, McMonagle. That's perfect.
Well, welcome to the Home Trails podcast, Mike.
Thank you. Really happy to be here. Excited to talk about Snowdonia and anything else that this conversation might take us to.
Yeah, yeah. So I sort of picked up on the fact that I'm a regular listener to Finn's podcast, Single Track, and I sort of and I knew that you were obviously at the race because I'd actually been messaging your good lady, sort of giving a I think I commented on a post about that she put on about the weather, I think, and I'd sort of mentioned that this was a this it seems to be highly unusual weather for Wales, but it seems to be quite consistent that it's happening every year now. And you were fortunate to get some sunshine where it's normally absolutely chucking it down with rain, which it is now. Actually, now it's absolutely the rain is here now. It's absolutely slinging it down with rain.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, we felt really fortunate to have sunny, clear, dry weather, and I mean, man, packing for that trip, I had I probably in my suitcase had I think two, maybe three pairs of tights, probably at least three, maybe four different jackets, a variety of like waterproof, windproof type jackets, um, multiple long sleeve shirts and layers. Like I was prepared for,
yeah.
a long day or two and full night of potentially very cold and wet conditions where I wanted to be changing out of different layers and different clothes a lot. Like that's what I was prepared. I had a couple different pairs of gloves, like waterproof gloves. I had the waterproof pants, obviously, that are part of the required gear. Like I had all that stuff, and I was, prepared mentally and logistically to use it. And I ended up doing the whole 100 miles in shorts and a short sleeve shirt with no gloves.
That is British weather for you. It's unpredictable, but yeah, it's been weird actually. The last sort of 2 or 3 years that for that race has been, it
Yeah.
normally catches people out. So people expect it to be like a cold and rainy because it can be this time of year in Wales, and for a lot of the year it can be. Um, so it seemed to be like an early season race that kind of caught people out. So they weren't prepared for it to be hot, and then it's just that weekend. It's just suddenly summer comes upon us, and loads of people really struggle with the heat. But I think it's been people are kind of prepared for it now because it seems to be it seems to be warm more often than not. I suppose that is the result of climate change. I think.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I, I guess I had seen the previous probably 2 years worth of like highlight videos and things on YouTube from the event, and I saw that those were like, from everything I could tell, beautiful,
Yeah, yeah.
clear skies, and I was like, I asked several people about that because honestly I was confused. I know that the race in its history has been like called short, right, because of nasty weather, and like so I was a little confused if they were only showing like the clear parts from the last 2 years, or if there was some catch there, and it turns out that's just, I guess, been the normal now, or is becoming the normal, for better or worse, for Ultra Trail Snowdonia.
Yeah, it seems to be. Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
well, I'm glad you had nice weather. There'd be I can't imagine like traveling all that way that you've come and then having the most miserable weather. But then if you'd expected it, then you would have been kind of getting what you expected anyway, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think so. And honestly, yeah, I'm glad we had the clear weather that we did as well. But I'm mostly glad for the crew's sake. Like what a wonderful crew experience that event is. And yeah, my wife and our good friends Peter and Emily, who live in London, um, the three of them came out, and they were out there for all 29 hours, helping get me around the loop. And I think from their accounts they had a great time, and it was beautiful weather. They got out on some good hikes and runs themselves, and um, enjoyed the towns and walking about the towns, waiting for me to come in. Like, yeah, they had a wonderful experience, and obviously so did I. But I think that was a major highlight.
Mm.
I honestly I can't imagine that course, what it must be like in what would be considered more normal conditions.
Yeah, yeah. Wales is it's known it's known for its terrain, the
Mm,
reality of it and stuff. And if it's been raining, then those rocks are obviously slippy and
yeah.
sharp. Yeah, you can. Yeah. I've been up in North Wales in all sorts of weather, and yeah, as much as we're not used to the heat over here as much as you guys. I think I'd prefer it to be warm than absolutely slinging it down. So I think you did really well considering that coming over and coming to a race that you'd never done before and diving straight in and throwing yourself into it. And yeah, you've you're not afraid to take on because people. I haven't done UTS. It's not because I'm afraid of how hard the race is. I know how hard the race is because I know people that have done it. It's on my list of things to do and I haven't got around to doing it yet. But I know how feared that route is by people, especially if they've had a bad experience on it and then they go back to the race. It can be a thing of nightmares if they've had a bad time the year before.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely loved it and can't recommend it. I was afraid of it. I was definitely intimidated. Um, it was very daunting to me both before the start and honestly during the race. I was, I think, pretty consistently intimidated by what was still to come, just knowing kind of the numbers or maybe a little bit about, how long certain climbs or how steep certain climbs that were upcoming might be. But having not actually seen any of it yet, I spent the whole time still intimidated, I think, by what was to come. And um, I have actually, it's funny. I put a I kind of just brain dumped like throughout the several days following the race. I opened a note on my phone and I was just um like kind of brain dumping any thoughts that came to mind or reflections about the race, whether it was how I did or what I could have done better or just, things I wanted to share with people that when conversations came up. And one of the things I wrote was every time I got surprised by the course, I was unpleasantly surprised. Because I knew to expect, like I knew what the profile was. I knew like how it was going to be extremely technical. I didn't know exactly what that meant, but like in my mind, it was a very gnarly course.
Mm.
Um, so I knew all those things, and that was my expectation. But then there were still times where something kind of surprised me, or something happened that I didn't know to expect with the way the route turned or whatever, and it was always an unpleasant surprise. Like it was always harder than I thought it was going to be, or more technical or whatever.
Yeah, it'll get you like that. Absolutely, yeah. Um, just moving away from UTS, we'll come back to UTS. I've forgotten my initial question that I always ask everybody, sort of new that comes onto the podcast. So I can't let you get away without answering this question. So it's the superhero question. So if all ultra runners are superheroes in one way or another, you know, we do these amazing feats of endurance. If we're all superheroes have an origin story, so how they became that superhero. So, Mike, what's your superhero story? So, how did you go from being normal Mike to being somebody who, does the things that you do in media and travels the world racing and throwing yourself into these amazing races around the world. So you can go back as far as you like, basically your backstory, how you got into doing ultras and media and stuff. So go back as far as you like, or
Hmm.
as much detail or as little detail as you want to sort of brush over it. So
Sure. Yeah, it's a fun question, and a
should
fun
have,
way to word
should have
it.
prepped you on it, really.
No, it's no, I think it's kind of simple for me. Um I it probably starts with like my first marathon, I guess. Which I did at a relatively young age. I was 15 years old, I
Wow,
think.
that is young.
And I maybe there was, yes, what, like go back to normal Mike, like maybe there just never was a normal Mike. I don't know. But because I think 15-year-old Mike had this thought that he wanted to do a marathon before he turned 16. Like that was a specific thought that I had for some reason in my head as a like freshman or sophomore in high school. Don't know why. I don't know where that was necessarily born from.
Mm.
Um, I think I wanted to be able to like I think actually I think I used to joke about this. I don't think this is actually how I feel or how I will feel as a soon to be father once I do become a parent here relatively soon. But I remember as a teenager thinking like, if I have kids someday and they're lazy, I want to be able to tell them what I did when I was their age. That's not actually how I feel. Um, and I don't think will be reflective of my parenting style, but I remember thinking that as a like 15-year-old. So anyways, I ran a marathon when I was 15 and um, just specifically, like if anybody's heard me talk before, either privately or on another podcast, maybe I've said this before publicly, but um, I just specifically remember standing on the start line of this marathon and not knowing whether or not I was going to be able to do it. Like, didn't know if I was going to be able to do what I was about to attempt. And at the time, I did it. I finished. It took me 3 hours, 42 minutes, and 17 seconds. That's like ingrained in my head. Um, and it was at the time like the most difficult physical thing I've ever done. I was absolutely wrecked. Like I was way more wrecked from that than I was from Ultra Trail Snowdonia. Um, but I was so satisfied and so proud. And then I became curious, right? Like, okay, I did it. Like that feels really, really good. I wasn't sure if I could do it. I did it. Now I wonder, can I do it a little faster? And so then I was probably a little bit younger than I would maybe recommend people start running marathons, or most people would recommend. Um, so I took a few years off. I waited till I got to college, and then I started running more marathons again because I was curious, like, oh, can I do it a little faster? And then when I was in college, I was part of a club, like a marathon club team
Mm.
that we would run marathons and local races and things. And there were a few sort of mentors or people on that marathon team, kind of a subsect of it, who I found out were doing these like 50 and 100-mile races, and they were on trails. And I thought that was really, really cool. And I became curious about that. Like I was in this kind of journey of seeing, oh, can I run the marathon a little bit faster than I did last time? But then I realized there was another question of like, oh, there's something else that I don't know if I can do. I want to try that. And so then I signed up for a 50 miler. Um, and same feeling on the start line. Like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do what I'm about to try. And I did it. I finished that one. I found out there were 100 milers out there. And so it was kind of the cycle just kind of spiraled to where we are today. It was like running has been a constant thread in my life, like almost my entire life. And um, never super competitively or anything like that. But I've just always really, really enjoyed the act of running and the act of trying to get better at something. And I've really thoroughly enjoyed the community that I have found as a runner. I've kind of moved around quite a bit throughout my, I'd say, like post collegiate and adult life. And everywhere I moved, I found a running community to sort of ingrain in and make new friends and explore new places. So all of those things, and then yeah, exploring new places was another thing. The way that running has showed me, introduced me to new people, new relationships, and new places has just been something that's been a constant thread in my life that I just absolutely love. And I I believe that as hopefully as many people that can experience that, that have the opportunity to explore that avenue, I hope that they do. Um, so then that kind of led me into becoming a photographer. I love taking photos, and I kind of wanted to be able to share what I was doing and how life changing it can be, and how scenic and beautiful and special the experience can be. I wanted to be able to share that with more people. Um, so I, yeah, picked up a camera in about 2017 and started learning how to become a better photographer. And it's become another thing that I enjoy, like getting better at. Um, and also obviously to be able to weave it in so closely with my passion for running and for the running community. Um, that's been a really fun thing to make a more prominent part of my life. Um, and that brings me to today, yeah, where um, I tend to travel around quite a bit, and one of the things I love to do is um, I try to capture other people's experiences running in a way that I would like to be my experience to be captured, and create memories for them, hopefully that um, that I would appreciate memories, my own memories being captured in that way. And I also enjoy sharing sort of the grit and the spirit of trail and ultra running, or really all types of running, but I tend to focus on trail and ultra. Um, I enjoy being able to share like the spirit of the sport with both fans of the sport and hopefully with some new, new observers of it as well.
Mm. Yeah, I find it really interesting the fact that all the media guys that I know that are in ultra running and trail running sort of media space, um, they are all runners. It's like you've when you think about other sports, like other professional sports, you
Mm.
have photographers that go and shoot like baseball games or over here like football games, like soccer matches and stuff like that. And then I don't think that they have that same level of passion. So I always find it fascinating to sort of meet a photographer that's in trail and ultra running because you kind of we're kind of different, aren't we? We have that passion for the sport, and I think, like you say, you want to take the photos of people that you would want for yourself. So is
Hmm.
that something that you always think about? Yeah, I know obviously you came over and raced UTS. Were you running around thinking this would be a great spot for a photo of me, or were you sort of just hyping the guys up that you saw when you were out there?
I wished there was a way I could both shoot the race and run the race because it was so pretty and such iconic. Just, I mean, there's not really a better word than epic to describe that terrain. I don't think like it was such epic terrain, um, and it required so much, yeah, grit and toughness. I think to navigate that course and um, I was constantly wishing there was somehow a way for me to both participate in it and to take photos of it and of the people doing it. Yeah.
Did you meet any of the photographers out there and speak to any of them? Did you know any of them that were there, or was it sort of first time
No,
meeting?
I didn't know anybody there. Yeah, I one there was one person out there shooting who he got one photo of me and he sent it to me afterwards in a DM, which I really appreciated. And he did some really cool work. His name is Hannes. I don't know if you're familiar. I want to
Hannes?
say, I don't want to mess up his name. I think it was Hannes Becker.
Mm,
Um,
not sure.
but
Yeah.
I mean, I looked into his work and he's yeah, Hannes Becker. Um, I'm not sure. He might have been shooting for maybe a certain client or something out there, but he sent me one and he's an extremely talented photographer, it looks
Mm,
like, that did a really cool job kind of
mm,
capturing the essence of that race, it seemed
yeah.
like.
Mm. Um, how do you sort of feel about running versus photography? If somebody said you had to do one or the other, what would you pick? Is that a difficult thing to think about, or
That is a difficult thing to think about. Yeah. I love running. I really, really enjoy running. Um, yeah, I don't know, but I mean, it's something I have to it's sort of a choice that I do have to face sometimes, just as a professional photographer who is largely involved and focused on the sport that I also love to participate in. Yeah, like I think it was last year, 2024, I had the opportunity to run Western States, for example. And I sort of had to make the choice between accepting my spot in Western States or shooting it. And for a variety of reasons, I chose to shoot it instead of run it. Um, but then, like, I chose to run UTMB last year
Mm,
instead of what would have been, probably a great professional opportunity for me as a photographer. I did make the choice to
mm,
forego Western States, but participate myself in UTMB. So it is like kind of a balance that I do have to make some choices between sometimes.
mm. Did you am I right in I might be misremembering this, but I think I remember you putting a post out, may have been last year or the year before, if you sort of and it was in that kind of mindset of I'm gonna if you almost deciding that you were gonna throw yourself into running more. Was that, am I remembering that right? That you kind of were like, I'm gonna give this running thing, everything and everything I've got, kind of thing, or am I misremembering?
You might be, I don't, that doesn't sound like anything I've said. I will say that I've given running probably everything I've got for a very long time. Just that just means something a little bit different at different stages of my life and what else I have going on or whatever. But
Yeah.
um yeah, it's not I
Maybe
am
it's
not
somebody
somebody
else.
who,
Maybe it was another photographer. Yeah, because I suppose sort of given the choice, if you had the ability to be able to achieve everything that you wanted to achieve in ultra running versus achieve everything that you wanted to achieve in photography, then which would which would you rather have? Would you rather be the runner with the
Mm,
achievements or the photographer?
I'd rather be the photographer, I think, when you word it that way. Yeah, I think I'm very happy with who I am as a runner and where I'm at as a runner. I'm not I don't consider myself an elite runner or, I certainly don't have any ambitions of doing it professionally.
Mm.
Um, I just enjoy exploring myself and getting the most out of myself and doing that through the mechanism of ultra running. But yeah, whether I continue to get better at it or, I just continue to have experiences like I did at Snowdonia where um, I fully immerse myself in the experience and I learn a little bit more about myself each time. Like if that's what happens every time, that's a good place to be.
Yeah.
Um, I am definitely still trying to grow, I think, as a photographer, like more so than I'm trying to grow as a runner, I would say in that regard.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm curious about where your Instagram handle comes from. Shit in the woods.
Yeah.
Is that obviously just a play? Is that a play on um what we have to do as ultra runners, or something that you have to do as a photographer as well?
Oh yeah, kind of both. No, it's yeah, I wish there was a superhero story for that one, but it's just um when I was first on Instagram, I had like a very generic username and at one point as I started to use the platform a little bit more, this is before I was a photographer even, like it was just iPhone photos at the time and I
Mm.
just wanted something a little more fun as a username and I was just thinking about things I like to do, and I came up with it kind of crossed my mind that I really just like doing shit in the woods, and sometimes I shit in the woods, and so it's a little bit of a double entendre, which is a type of humor that I'm extremely
Yeah.
fond of, and otherwise, yeah, it was just kind of I just thought it was kind of fun, and then I became a photographer, and then I realized it's a pretty catchy
Mm.
like people it stands out and I think
Yeah,
people kind of notice the
yeah,
username so
yeah.
it has draws some fun conversations and whatnot.
Amazing. Yeah. It's definitely like a bit of a one of a kind name that everyone sort of recognizes you for. You're also known as the fast media guy as well, aren't you?
I've heard that term thrown around a little bit. Finn and Brett talk about it sometimes. Yeah, I don't know if I qualify. Maybe, yeah, I'll accept that. Sometimes I'm somewhat fast, but not always.
Yeah, amazing. So just sort of going back to Snowdonia then. So is your is so I'm guessing that is the first sort of British race that you've done, but you've done obviously been to Europe and done European races and stuff. So how does it sort of compare to other European races that you've done?
Yeah, that was the first time that my wife and I had been to the UK at all. And yeah, I mean, this was an all-time favorite race experience for me. Like, I think it it may very well be my favorite race that I've ever done. It's a little stiff competition maybe for that title, but like UTMB itself, I had the opportunity to run that last year and is obviously an extremely special bucket list event. Um, with very different scenery
Mm.
than Snowdonia. But yeah, I don't know. Like sometimes it gets hard to, yeah, maybe actually say something is a favorite because all of these experiences are so different in their own ways and they're all unique in their own ways. But yeah, this was Snowdonia was definitely an all-timer for me. Um, Definitely like the hardest race I've ever done, like the most difficult course I've ever done for sure, or attempted. Like I've got some DNFs at races like I think I made it like 70 or 74 miles or something of TDS one year, um, out of about 90. So did most of that course. I did about 80% of Ultra Trail Cape Town 100 miler a couple years ago. Um, but yeah, like those stand out as some of the more difficult courses I've been on. And of course, with like UTMB also being one of the more difficult. But this is, I mean, this was easily, I can say, like a more difficult course than those ones. And then mile for mile, as scenic or more scenic than anything.
Mm. Yeah. So is this sort of something that it's like a bit of a revelation for you that you've sort of realized that, because I heard you sort of say on single track that it's almost like you didn't really appreciate how good the trails were over here or how technical they are and the kind of the UK running scene compared to because I've run in the US and I've ran in Canada and I love we like you said on that podcast we sort of we go over to the States for the big the big scenery and stuff, but your trails are tend to be sort of like fire roads and runnable,
Yeah,
whereas over here, the mountains aren't as big, but the trails are quite gnarly, aren't they? So,
for sure.
was it sort of did it really surprise you the kind of trail running that we have over here then?
Yeah, well, um, it didn't surprise me. What surprised me was I said this on single track too. I just never knew how amazing the UK is for mountain running. Um, I don't know why. I just never, as an American born and raised, I never realized somebody who's been running ultra marathons and trail races for I don't know, 15 plus years. I just never knew how incredible
Mm,
mountain how incredible the mountain terrain in the UK is and can be. Like I said, it was our first time there. Um, so I just hadn't had exposure to it before, but I was I'm like still trying to figure out how I've gone so long as a passionate ultra runner without truly realizing that. Because I know the media is out there, the content, the runners from the area like are on the scene. Um, I know it's all out there. I just don't know how I somehow failed to realize it before. But yeah,
uh,
and you're right. Like the we have terrain in the US that is comparable. Um, but by and large, the US will not have races on that terrain for various reasons, whether it's federal land management or preservation or um, lack of actual trails just being constructed or worn
mhm,
into that terrain, like whatever it is. Like you can do the terrain on training runs or whatever on your own, but by and large you won't find anything like that in a race,
mm,
um, which yeah, it always kind of disappoints me a little bit, but there are some reasons for it that are valid.
yeah, yeah, strange. You need sort of so something that happened. I'm trying to think how. But I think it was recently the 75-year anniversary of what was called the mass trespass in the UK. So it was in what's now known as the Peak District. So you would have driven as you drove north, you would have sort of skirted the edge of the Peak District before you got to sort of turn off and go to Wales. And then the Lake District is further up the
Mm,
UK. But the Peak District is like that's the local national park for me. So
mhm.
the edge of the Peak District is about 15-minute drive for me, and I'm on a trail, and it's a national park for us. But that used to be privately owned land, which still is privately owned. Um,
Oh wow.
and it was kept as like hunting land for the the richer people that owned all the estates and things, and they used it just purely for, purely for hunting and stuff, pheasant shooting and things like that.
Mm.
But all the locals that wanted to use the land and were told to keep off it, they basically organised what was called a mass trespass, and basically they all just it all just all turned up at a certain spot and just went over all the land, and basically what it was just like a like what would you call it, a demonstration basically of
Right.
like we need access to the land, and it actually worked. So it all went through the courts, and it was like the law was passed that in Scotland they have the right to roam. I know that you sort of know about that, don't you? The right to roam.
Hmm.
So up there, it's even, the law protects you even more. So literally, you can just go absolutely anywhere. You can go on farmers' fields and just, you've got a right to go everywhere. But in the UK, in England, it's a bit tight to control, but there's footpaths everywhere. So literally, so where I live, I sort of live just outside of a village, and literally there's a public footpath that goes literally outside my house. So the path is there, right in front of my house. People walk down it every day. It joins up with another trail that used to be a railway line, so it's a disused railway line that's been turned into a trail. So that's like I go on there and do my like speed workouts and stuff. But
Hmm.
everywhere you look in England, it's just crisscross with footpaths, and you can just go and you can go anywhere basically, and go as long as you're on a footpath, and as long as the farmer hasn't decided to put a fence up, which they do
Hmm.
sometimes, and then they get told to take them down. You can kind of go everywhere, and it was something that I kind of took for granted a little bit when I visited other places. So even as close as like going over to Ireland for work, I realized that that is more like the US. So you've got designated trails, and you'll have a trailhead with a car park, and you drive there, you park up, and then you use the trail, which is something that, was a little bit alien to me because I was so used to just coming out of my house, go on the trail that links up with another trail, another footpath, and you can go as far as you like. Um, so that's obviously the differences that we have over here, and I think that kind of allows us to be able, because the premise is already there that people use day in day out. Permitting for races is obviously is a lot easier. So I don't know, maybe you need to organise a mass trespass somewhere in a on the lands over there, and get lobbying the government to try and open things up.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool to hear about that, and I'm interested in looking into it some more to learn more of that history. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like there's a lot more of that federal land management here and like wilderness preservation in the U.S., which I don't want to like misconstrue. I
Yeah,
think that's very
there for a
important.
reason. Yeah.
Um, but I believe that trail running and ultra running can be a very sustainable,
Mm,
and if not neutral, impact on those environments, a net positive impact on those environments.
yeah.
So I think that would be an interesting, like if there's anything worth sort of conversation worth having towards overturning or loosening some of those rules in the US, that I think it would be with that focus, but that even that I recognize is could be kind of difficult to,
Mm,
or it could still be placing a lot of trust in
mm,
people like us that want to organize those events.
mm.
That's one piece of it. The other piece of it, it's not all like that's not the only issue that keeps us from having races on the best terrain. Like it's not all federal wilderness areas. Some of it is like, more local municipalities that manage land or local, yeah, whatever it is that there's just not, yeah, like they won't. Where I live here in Salt Lake City, right here in the foothills in downtown Salt Lake City, there are some extremely gnarly trails that you can do. And I'd spent a lot of my training for UTS on those trails and in that terrain because it's quite similar to a lot of what I experienced on the UTS course, um, in terms of steepness and technicality. But like Salt Lake City itself or the local land managers in that area, if you want to have an event, it has to be on what they think of as like these established trails, even though there are these kind of user created trails that are the most fun, that we as mountain runners think are the most fun. And they are very much trail, like it's more of a trail than most of what I was on during UTS, in the sense of like an established, path
Route.
from point A to point B up a mountain. But they're quote unquote user created, and so those local organizations won't permit something there. And that may be because it could be because of some private property again. It could also be for environmental concerns, which I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on. But things like erosion or, local habitats, impact on local wildlife or foliage or things like that. So there are reasons for all these things. I understand that, but that doesn't mean I think I'm still allowed to be frustrated that we can't show it off as in a more formal way, as like an event that people would travel here
Yeah.
to experience.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But I suppose also the flip side of that is you have events like Western States, which is all about it being a small race, isn't it? So you're only permitted, what is it, 400 and something people to allowed to go through that course. And that is
Which is
kind
actually
of,
because of a wilderness area.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's kind of created. Do you think that's helped to sort of create a bit of mystique around races like that? That the fact that you
Mm.
can't just get into it, although, and years ago you obviously could sign up and get straight in, but now it's obviously a ballot and everything.
Yeah.
Do you think, if Western States was like a UTMB start where you've got thousands of people that could legitimately do that race, do you think it would have the same sort of kudos to it as a race if it was mass participation in the same way?
I think it would. UTMB does.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, I think it would. And I don't know off the top of my head, the 10 or 20,000, I think there's like 20,000 people
yeah,
maybe in the
yeah.
lottery. That I could be totally off on that, but um, thousands and thousands of people every year want to run Western States clearly, and yeah, they're only able to permit 370 or so. So um, I don't think that I do think that yeah, it does sort of create this like sort of lifetime or
Mm,
multi-year journey at least for people, that creates a certain allure and aura around the event at Western States. Um, Yeah, but I hesitate to say that it's not an iconic enough event and course on its own merit that
yeah, yeah.
it would still have, if all 20,000 people that want to run it every year, if there was room for them to do so,
Mm.
I think there would still be just as much interest.
It'd be interesting, wouldn't it, seeing thousands of people go up the escarpment at the start, wouldn't it?
It would be a mess. It would be a mess. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, other races, you see it at UTMB and,
Yeah,
a number of
often.
other, yeah.
Yeah. What's the one in is it in South Africa, which is Comrades, isn't it? Is the biggest by
Yeah,
by
that's on
number.
pavement though. That is
By
on the
number,
roads.
yeah. By number,
Yeah.
it's the biggest ultra in the world, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, chaos. Yeah, not for me. Um, so what did you think of the Lake District then? So obviously you went to North Wales, and then
Yeah.
after you'd been there you went up to the Lake District. So obviously the Lake District is like steeped in trail running history. Basically, well, fell running was invented there, wasn't it? So what was your sort of take on that sort of running scene?
Yeah, what I hoped was that the Lake District would be a really nice place to recover from 100 miles, and I was fortunate that I was very glad that I finished the 100 miles in Wales in Snowdonia, so that I could truly soak that in and have that feeling when I got to the Lake District with Leah. Um, and it definitely was. It was a great place to recover, a little bit of an active recovery. Like we were excited and hopeful that I would still feel up to getting out for some like light runs or hikes in the Lake District, and we did do a couple. Um, Similarly, I was similarly just taken away by the scenery there. I thought the terrain, at least that we experienced, was pretty representative and similar to what I experienced in Snowdonia. So it was really fun to be able to get out on some of that terrain and in that scenery with Leah, because during a lot of Snowdonia, I don't know, I was alone for almost the whole thing, and I really wanted to be able to share it with people. And I couldn't get my phone like locked up at like, I don't know, 2 hours into the race at Snowdonia. And so I wanted to take more videos and photos and stuff to be able to share um, my experience with Leah and other people, and I couldn't because my phone locked up. So, anyways, I was really grateful um, to be able to spend some time in that terrain and in that scenery with Leah in the Lake District. Um, just absolutely, I mean, just so beautiful. The terrain, it's unlike anything I've ever like. The
Mm,
scenery is unlike anything I've ever seen before. So it's a very unique place, at least in my experience. Um, and yeah, it seemed comparable to Snowdonia, but less, at least what we did, like less remote. I guess like the towns are bigger. Like Snowdonia in northern Wales was, you're in that terrain and you come down into like a really tiny little village essentially. With, maybe a few buildings or like a cafe and maybe a school house or something like that. The towns in the Lake District seemed a bit more like touristy and
yeah.
certainly bigger.
Mm,
I know the Lake District is big, and I'm sure you can get to some very remote feeling places. We didn't quite have that opportunity, but that was my impression of it, was similar terrain with just a little bit bigger towns and like a little bit more infrastructure to spend
mhm.
some, maybe to be able to spend a little bit longer time there. Um, and we would have loved to, yeah, I think we spent like 3 days, 2 nights in the Lake District. Would have, I mean, I want to go back. I easily could have spent another week exploring there.
Well, you need to come back and do a Bob Graham round, don't you?
Yeah. Oh, that seems so appealing to me now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I always wonder sort of what trail runners in the US think of like the UK like fell running scene because it is quite unique because most fell races are, they're minimally organized. They're like very cheap to enter, and you probably all you do is just run up one hill and back down again, and you have a cup of tea and a piece of cake at the end.
Mhm.
So what's your sort of take on British fell running compared to because there can't be anything that really compares to it in the US. Maybe sort of sky running races that are, but they're a bit longer, aren't they?
Yeah, maybe you can educate me a little bit because I still don't know that I actually know what I was talking to Finn about this from Single Track. We were on a hike 2 days ago, and I told him like I actually don't know specifically how fell running is defined compared to what we think of as trail or
Mm,
mountain running.
yeah,
So
yeah.
maybe you can educate me.
Yeah,
Bef-
so fell running, so it's got its roots in basically like all good things. It was like drunken bets. So it would be like two farmers that had had a drink and they'd like run out of things to bet on and one of the things was like, right, I can run to the top of that mountain, that top of that peak there and back down before you can. And supposedly that's how fell running began. It was just like look, and then it turned into like gentlemen going and doing it, and then there would be money exchanged on races. So it was like a bit of a gambling thing to begin with, that people would race up the mountain and back down again. So most fell races are, they're quite short, sort of 2 or 3 miles, 5 miles. You get the odd one that is like classed as a long course fell race. So one of the famous ones near me is called the Edale Skyline Race, and that is about 22, 23 miles, and it's just like a loop of the skyline of Edale, it's actually where the spine race starts, Edale. So that's the
Mm.
start of the spine race, start of the Pennine Way is there. And it's just like the ridge that goes all the way around that valley, and that's classed as a long fell race. But most are sort of like 2 or 3 miles, or literally just like straight up a hill to the top, turn around and come back down again, and you're done like in half an hour, sort of thing, an hour. Sort of really fast, intense. Um, they kind of a good fell runner is sort of classified as somebody who can. There's like a famous quote from I can't remember his name now. He wrote a book about it, but he was basically saying on the descent, you just have to disengage brain, and once you've disengaged your brain, and you just let your legs like fly, and you run
Mm.
down the hill, and basically that's it. But then I suppose you've got other than that, they're the kind of races that you have. in the Lake District and like sort of in Derbyshire near me in the Peak District.
Mm,
Um, and then after that, it's sort of then you go into classified as proper ultras after that. So you get trail marathons, trail half marathons, but then you're sort of into the ultra realms. So in the Lake District, you've obviously got like Lakes in the Day and Lakeland 100 and Lakeland 50, and they're like just
mhm.
like obviously like loops similar to like UTS. So that'd be a
Yep.
good that'd be a good one for you to do. Do
Heard about it. Yeah.
Lakeland 100. That is, classed as being one of the harder ones, similar to UTS. So that'd be a good one to come back and do. Then obviously you need to come back when Finn comes and does the spine race when he allegedly is coming to do it.
Yeah, definitely. So then, yeah, and you probably have listeners that are like, what, how does this idiot not know what fell running means? But it sounds like um from your description, fell running more specifically compared to trail running
Yeah,
or ultra running,
it's
fell
different.
running sort of refers more specifically to like the shorter distance
Yeah,
and higher octane kind of effort.
that's it. Yeah, yeah.
Is there a is there a terrain specificity that kind of, or like, is it trail, off
No,
trail?
not
Like,
really, because
okay.
some of it is just like you pick your own line as well. Um, so you don't you get given. So I'm just thinking about like the Edale skyline. You've got points where, forget what you call them now. There's specific like grid references on the route that you've got to go
Mm,
to and get your thing. Like you can have like a thing
punch
like
it.
kind of like, yeah, you punch your ticket and you've got to go to all those. But it's up to you which route you take to get to it. So
Are there kind of like would you say that you're on a trail most of the
yeah,
time?
yeah. So
Yeah.
you kind of on a trail. So I'm just thinking about like the one that I'm thinking of, like Edel Skyline. Um, you know where all of the points are that you've got to get your ticket punched.
Uh,
But there's so many different routes that on so like on the Kinder Plateau, which is like like the broad area at the top. You kind of there's so many like rocks and boulders and stuff that you can pick an absolute multitude of different routes to get through. And if you're a local fell runner, you kind of have like inside knowledge on the best route.
yeah.
Whereas if you just literally just turned up to the race, you'd just be following somebody because basically you wouldn't know where to go. Yeah, so they're
Mm,
kind of low key. Obviously, no like you don't have any like GPS device or anything like that. You're just literally relying on map reading skills and or knowing the route or knowing that literally you've just got to go up like a rocky trail.
yeah.
And maybe coming down like a grassy bank, or you cut in the corners of the trail coming down and just literally taking the racing line straight across. So you see a lot of people like go flying and
Yeah.
the
I
resulting
think then I think then to answer your initial question about like how that compares or if there's anything like that in the US, like not really. Like the Mount Marathon race, I've never been to that one, but it sounds
yeah.
maybe like a somewhat similar,
Yeah,
like, you
yeah, that
know,
does sound like a big fell race. That does to me. Yeah,
there's kind of multiple options,
yeah,
not unlimited options. I think there are,
yeah,
maybe 2 to 4 sort of defined routes that people will take up and or down on Mount Marathon. But by and large, like, yeah, we have like the shorter distance, shorter duration kind of, like I said, like higher octane races, like the
mhm,
Cirque series is a really good one
yeah,
that
yeah,
that has like, still up to, they're still maybe in the like 90 minute to 2.5 hour sort of for the fastest people.
mm,
But yeah, kind of shorter, steeper efforts. Um, but by and large, and including in the Cirque Series races, yeah, in the US, we need to stick to a more defined
mm,
trail.
mm,
Um, and yeah, we have the courses will be marked more specifically with designated routes that you need to stay on.
mm,
Again, either for preservation of the terrain or ecological reasons or what have you. But
mm,
yeah, that is different, I think, than what I saw in the UK and in Snowdonia and the Lake District, where um, there are still defined trails, obviously,
yeah,
but like there's a lot fewer trees also. Like, I don't know, there's just more
yeah, yeah,
opportunity to
yeah,
roam more broadly and define your own routes to the ridge or
mm,
to the peak. So
mm,
um that's a little bit different here is,
mm.
yeah, we tend to be
But
a bit more defined.
even in the lakes and Snowdonia, there's, because it's such a tourist attraction, those areas, they tend to be more defined routes anyway, and like the
Mm,
chances to sort of come off those routes are sort of not slim, but you've just got a lot of well maintained or well used tracks
yeah.
that people use. Um, so yeah, I think maybe, when you see a proper fell race, that's probably more of the time where you see people cutting across trails and not using the
Yeah.
like the main drags and making their own route up. Yeah, it's kind of yeah, it's I do love the British, and I loved hearing you talk about it on single track, the way that you sort of spoke so passionately about it. So I had a conversation with do you know Dan Davis, who so he goes to Western States every year, and he runs I think he does one of the follow cams at Western
Okay.
States. Yeah, you
Yeah.
probably know him. You'd have seen him at races, but we had a conversation, and he sort of I'd already thought about getting in touch with you to get you on the podcast, and he sent me a message saying you need to get Mike on, and you need to do a sound bite of him talking about Snowdonia and use it for the tourist board, UK tourist board. And I was
Seriously,
like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, I understand what you mean, but I think the UK Tourist Board is probably okay.
I would imagine. Yeah. Not sure I can help with that.
But he was super passionate about it as well, and he was saying, it's great to hear, yeah, and I agreed with him. It's great to hear somebody talk so passionately about UK trail running, and because we sort of, I kind of have a foot in each sort of camp. So as much as my podcast is very sort of UK centric, and I will interview people around the Spine race and around like UTMB and races that are sort of in Europe. I've also, my love of ultra running came from like reading like Ultra Marathon Man by Dean Karnazes. So
Mm.
my obsession with ultra running came from like all of your races in the US. And for
Mm.
me, like I kind of discovered those races and had a passion for them before I kind of got a passion for UK races, even though
Mm.
ironically, they're on my doorstep sort of thing. So I kind of, the reason why I wanted to get you on and why I get people like Finn on and stuff is because I want to try and there's a lot of people that I speak to in the UK that are in the trail running and ultra running scene here that don't know everybody in the US one, and I kind of my hope is to kind of bring the sort of two worlds together and show that we're all the same, aren't we? We all love running trails, and whether they're like
Yeah.
well defined trails or whether it's like off the beaten path, then the more the merrier. So I appreciate you coming over and giving it a taste.
Yeah, no, I am so great. Like I said, I'm so grateful I had the opportunity to check it out and discover for me a what was an untapped paradise for trail and mountain running.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate you coming over, and I appreciate you coming on podcast as well and sort of giving up some of your time. I know you're a busy man. You're about to get busier, aren't you? With a baby on the way.
Yeah, a little bit, I would say. Yeah. A couple more months. August, mid-August due date.
Yeah. How are you feeling about it?
Extremely excited. Yeah. Do you have kids?
Yes, I have got two teenage daughters now. So
Amazing.
I have gone through every stage, and now, yeah, and now I'm at the stage where basically I'm on my own now. So there's me, and I live with three women now. So it, yeah, it's gone from being me and the wife and our kids to
Yeah.
basically everybody's against me in the house.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're really excited. This is our first. We're having a boy,
Oh,
and we have a really, really great community in our area here in Salt Lake City, of good friends and other runners, many of whom
we've
are
had
also
yeah,
relatively new parents or
yeah,
becoming parents
that's
around the
good.
same time
Yeah.
as we are. So, we're just very, very we love our community here, and we're really, really excited to be parents. It's something that has been, yeah, I think a goal in life for both Leah and I for a really long time. So, we're excited to bring that to reality and to just bring one more layer of our relationships with the community, both locally and kind of the running community at large. Yeah, just bring one more layer to our relationship
Yeah.
with everyone. So very excited. I think yeah, we're making preparations. Still got to put the crib together and things like that,
I
but
mean,
we're
like all your years of ultra running will prepare you for the sleepless nights anyway, so you'll be fine.
I like to think so. Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah,
It's
probably.
yeah. Go ahead.
You got you. Yeah, yeah, I think you probably you soon realize that you can't you running takes a bit of a hit for a bit, but you know having kids like it. I'm sure you'll be the same, but it changed me like overnight. Literally, I was
Mm,
I went from being not that I was a selfish person before, but sort of yeah, when you're a couple, you kind of think about yourselves a bit, and then
hmm.
when you have kids, it like changes your sort of world perspective a little bit, and you kind of see things a bit differently, and it changes you, but it changes you for the better. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. I truly believe that that will happen to me as well. And yeah, Leah and I are both obviously excited to continue to be hopefully lifelong runners, but we
Yeah.
obviously know that it'll look different once we
Mm.
bring children into the picture. And yeah, Leah had the opportunity. She was in Western States this year. She was
Yeah.
at Hard
Yeah.
Rock this year.
Wow.
Um,
Can she
UTMB she could
defer?
have won this year.
Can
So
she defer all those races?
she
Yeah.
was able to defer all of them. They have slightly different deferral policies, but she's, she still talks about she is now 6 months, roughly 6 months pregnant, and is, still every week there's a different idea. Oh, maybe this one will be my first race back. Oh, maybe Snowdonia next year would be an interesting, like kind of like Steph Case, who
Yeah, yeah.
who's Snowdonia
Yeah,
100K,
literally breastfed all the way around. That was amazing.
and Steph is doing Hard Rock, so she was on a pregnancy deferral for Hard Rock,
Wow.
and chose to do Hard Rock in her first year postpartum. Um, I don't want to be too inaccurate, but I think Stephanie gave birth in around the November timeframe, um, and then used Snowdonia 100K as one of her first, maybe first big
Wow.
races back in a build to Hard Rock
Yeah.
later this summer. And so yeah, like kind of every week Leah has a different idea of like, oh, maybe Trans Gran Canaria would be really cool to do, or maybe now Snowdonia would be a cool one to do the 50K or the 100K at. Or, maybe it'll be more treadmill and road running and sign up for a marathon in the spring or something like that to try to get back into it. And, this is all assuming that there's that, she's able to have a healthy build back into running on a timeline similar to that, which obviously we don't know that either. Um, but that is to say yeah, we know it'll change us, and we know it'll bring different dynamics and challenges to our lives and to our running lives, but we're excited to continue to be hopefully lifelong runners. And yeah, for me, I've got another 100 miler in July, High Lonesome 100 in Colorado.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
that'd be good.
so kind of just trying to get us our friend Tyler, who is also expecting, him and Rachel are expecting their second child, about a week within a week or so of Leah expecting our first. Um, Tyler is also sort of on a heavy racing schedule these next couple months, and we kind of joked a little while ago, we're just trying to get as tired as possible, get it all out of our system before the babies come.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
not making any plans after August right now.
Yeah, very wise, very wise. Well, I wish you all the best with your future endeavors, being a dad and races, and I appreciate you coming on and talking to my audience, and hopefully sort of people will, if they didn't know sort of who you were before, they've sort of got a good idea of what you're all about, and appreciate you bigging up the UK trail running scene as well. That's always appreciated.
Thanks so much, Sam. This is a really fun conversation. Glad to be able to talk more about that experience, and hopefully see you and some of your audience members
Yeah.
around at an event sooner or later. So please
Yeah,
say
I'm
hello.
sure. Yeah, well, I mean, will you be coming over with Finn when he comes to do the spine?
I hope so. I don't know if there's a concrete plan there yet for him, but
Yeah, I think he was talking about 2027. I think that's
okay.
the last time I spoke to him. I think he decided, this might be not be public knowledge, and I probably might have just thrown him under the bus a bit with that, but
Nah, I'm sure it's okay. And yeah, I don't know that anything is set in stone, but if that's the case, yeah, he and I have a very heated rivalry, and um, we need to face off a few more times. So maybe the spine would be a
that could
great
be,
meet for
yeah,
one of those.
that could be the championship race at the end.
Yeah, amazing.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you coming on, mate. Thanks for
Cheers.
giving us your time. Really appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah, it was a blast. Thanks, Sam.
Brilliant. Cheers, mate. Thanks for listening, everyone. Cheers. Bye 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 bye.